Welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Top 10 Reasons to Use SharePoint for File Sharing. My name is Whitney Mahon. I'm an account executive here at FMT Consultants, and I'm joined by David Coons, our SharePoint Practice Manager. The agenda for today, we're going to start with a brief introduction. Then we're going to get into the good stuff, followed by a special promotion. So stay tuned till the end because we will be offering a free service promotion to webinar attendees only. And then last but not least, we will have a Q&A session. Now I'm going to hand it over to David, but before I do so, if at any time during the presentation you have any questions, feel free to type them into the comment box, and I will be monitoring them during the entire presentation, and then we will answer them all at the end. David?
Thanks, Whitney. So the first item I wanted to talk about with regard to SharePoint file sharing is the functionality for revisions and version history. Now you may see the familiar icon and image here from the webinar sign-up, and that's because this is probably one of the largest areas that people will use SharePoint for, reasons that people will use SharePoint for file sharing. So there is built-in functionality within SharePoint to keep version history on all of your documents. And I kind of wanted to tell a little story about this. So at the previous company that I worked for, and this was definitely not at FMT, it was a consulting company, and we had consultants that worked with salespeople to get business in, bring business in. So one of the documents that we collaborated on back and forth was a statement of work. So what would happen is the salesperson would draft an initial statement of work. They'd send that statement of work back to the consulting team for review, where changes would be made, and then the statement of work would be sent back to the sales team. Now this process continued probably 3 or 4 times, and by the end of the collaboration, there were 10 or 12 different versions of this statement of work. And as you can see on the screen here, previously we would do _date or _version number, and this caused a lot of issues. There was a time where one of the salespeople ended up sending one of the older versions of a statement of work with some misspellings and some wrong numbers in there. And it really was a bad situation for both us and for the client. So now at FMT Consultants, we're on SharePoint, and we're using version control. So when we send a link to the document now, we're always sending the latest and greatest copy. You'll always access the document correctly the first time. And then as you'll see when I get to the demo section, you still do retain the ability to go back and look at older versions of the document. And when you go back and look at the older versions, you can see who changed the document, when they changed it, if they changed any of the metadata properties, and you can even add comments as you change the document as well. Item number 2 for document storage and access would be metadata, tagging, sorting, and filtering. So companies that right now are not using SharePoint typically use a file share, something like a U drive or an H drive, like you can see on the left, with a complex and nested folder structure. This can cause a lot of issues when searching for documents because you might have to click through 15 different levels of folders to find the document that you're looking for. Then not only that, you might have folders that have no documents in them if you're trying to keep some sort of consistent structure. And you also, might have trouble showing somebody else where to find a document without sending them a huge folder path. So what you see on the right is SharePoint. This is SharePoint using document management metadata, and it allows for us to add additional columns. So in file servers, you're used to seeing what are actually metadata columns where it'll say file name, file size, document date. But those are static fields. In SharePoint, we can add our own fields for how we want to categorize our data. Third item I want to talk about for SharePoint document management are views. So The first two items we kind of talked about: document storage, tagging things with metadata, and having version control. And now I want to talk a little bit about accessing or consuming those documents. So when we get to SharePoint and we have a lot of documents uploaded and categorized, we can use views, both public and personal, meaning I can create a public view that when Whitney logs in, she'll also see the same view that I see, or I can create a personal view so that I'm the only one that sees that type of view. Views will allow you to select the different metadata columns that you want to see, and even pre-sort and filter by some of those metadata columns. The other option you have to do with views is you can create a different way to look at the document. So you can see here on the left, we're looking at a picture library. We can see thumbnails of the photos as opposed to a single line listing of documents like you see on the right for, PowerPoint documents. One of the most important parts about accessing SharePoint documents is the enterprise search capabilities. And this is available in the SharePoint on-premise version and the SharePoint online version. And it'll give you the ability to search not only within a single document library where we're looking at public and personal views, but it'll actually allow you to search across all of the content in your entire SharePoint environment. So you're probably used to a file share with your folders and typing in the search, into the upper right-hand corner. But it kind of just searches the file name. It's a little bit clunky, and it doesn't really help you find your documents that well. Well, in SharePoint, you get something that's very similar to a Google-like search or many of the other search engines that you see on the screen here. So as I start to type in a file name or a file type, I'll get autocomplete, just like I will, in Google. But not only that, the search will actually search across all of the documents' names. It'll search across all of the documents' contents, so it will index everything in the Word, PDF, and Excel documents. And it'll search across all of the metadata as well. So any of those custom fields that we define and fill data in will get crawled and searched. One of the newer capabilities that's built into SharePoint and SharePoint Online now is a document preview as well and search refinement. So as you move your mouse over your individual search results that you see, you can actually see a preview of the document without even clicking and opening it up. So not only do you get to narrow down the results by refining, but you can also just mouse over the 3 or 4 results that you get. You don't have to open them up in the client application, so it's a lot quicker. So with that being said, I wanted to go ahead and show you some of the functionality that we just discussed in number 1 through 4, reasons to use SharePoint for file storage. So give me a second, and I'm going to be popping up a SharePoint site here. So this is an example of an out-of-the-box SharePoint site. If you guys are familiar with SharePoint, and I know about half of you attendees do have SharePoint already, you might have something that's branded and maybe looks a little bit flashier. This is a simple SharePoint site in SharePoint Online that was spun up very quickly for this webinar. So I'm on the main intranet homepage here for an example company, FMT. And I'm going to go to the SharePoint team site. So the SharePoint team site is an example of a collaboration area for a small team of individuals to share documents, to communicate via social media. You can see a news feed, to share team tasks, and then keep track of clients or other information that may be pertinent to the team. So the first item we talked about was version history. If you take a look at the recent documents web part that I have in the upper right-hand corner here, you'll see a document called SharePoint Site Security Guidance. So typically, I would send a link to this document back and forth you know, with my coworkers as opposed to sending the actual file itself. So when somebody gets a link to this, they'll be able to open it and edit it in Word and make changes. And let me just make a quick change here so I can show you how it will add an additional version. I'm going to save the document back to SharePoint, and you'll notice that another feature with Office 2013 and the latest versions of SharePoint is as soon as you open a document from SharePoint or save the document, even in the Word application, it saves it directly back to SharePoint. So you don't have to download the document, make a change to it, and then drag and drop and copy that back to SharePoint. It's all integrated with the Office stack. So I saved my document. It even knows that I have check-in, check-out turned on in this document library, so I can go ahead and say check-in now. I'm going to publish a major version, and I'm going to say added an exclamation point. And say OK. Now when I click on this document, I'll get that latest version that was just modified seconds ago. Or if I wanted to see the history of who's worked on this document, I can go to the ellipsis menu here, and I can select the version history. So the version history, again, will give me when the document was changed, who changed the document, any comments, and then if I changed any of the metadata information, it would show me that change in metadata information too. Now, a lot of people ask, you know, if I have version 4.0 here, what is the point of having the previous 3 versions? So although you come to the page and you'll only see the latest version, you can still access all of the previous versions here. So you'll notice if I wanted to go back to 2.0 that was worked on yesterday, I can either view that document, restore the document version that would make it now 5.0, or delete that version of the document. So the next item I wanted to show was how metadata works in SharePoint. So again, remember, and I'm going to pop open my Windows Explorer here, remember that we actually have in your file system that you're used to, we actually have metadata columns. So the name here, the date modified, the type, and the size are all technically metadata columns. They're information about the folders and information about the documents. But when I go into SharePoint, I can define additional metadata columns. So you can see here that 2 additional metadata columns that I have are client and document type. And if you'll remember in the slides, one of the reasons that we want to use this metadata is so that we don't have this complex spider web of folders that we have to click through in order to get to our single document that we want. So you'll see all my documents are here in a single location instead of nested folders. But now if I wanted to find a presentation that I did for the water district client, I'd simply open my metadata column here, I'd select water district. My document type would be presentation, and you can see in a couple of clicks here, I've gotten to the single document that I was looking for without having to navigate through a complex folder structure. These client and document type columns here are just simple examples that I've defined for this example, but you can actually create any type of columns that you want. You can create columns that have choices. You can create columns that are, you know, enter, fill in the blank, or check boxes. We can have all that sort of information attached to the documents. You can see also this client metadata column has a link to it. So the reason this has a link to it is actually connecting to another list of information in SharePoint. So if I pop over to my clients list, you'll see that I've got a list of all these clients here in SharePoint with information about them. So not only can you do fill in the blank or drop down metadata columns, but you can also look up to other areas of SharePoint like you could do in a relational database. So that leads me into showing you guys what views look like. So what you're looking at right here with these metadata columns and these file names is actually a SharePoint view. But with views, we can group, we can filter, and sort all of this information and then save the way that we want to see it. So you can see, for example, one of the other views that I have is called Recent Docs. If I go to Recent Docs, you'll see that it's showing me only the recently modified documents here because I selected to show less columns and I selected to show the documents ordered by when they were modified. Now that's a pre-existing view. Another pre-existing view I have is by client. So you can see these things are broken down, and this will actually give users that are familiar with the folder interface the same sort of interaction with SharePoint documents as they drill down into their different types as folders, but you don't have any of the disadvantages of the folders and you get all of the advantages of the SharePoint metadata that you have. Another cool thing about views is if you create an ad hoc view, so let's say again I wanted to see water district, and let's say this time I want to see all the water district documents that are modified by me. I'll check off modified by David Coons, even though I made them all anyways, and I can click save this view, and I can go water district documents. Now the next time that I come to client documents, I'll have the option to go here and select my water district documents view. And that's one less click that I have to do in order to find these water district presentation documents that I created. So it's all about quick and easy access to your documents without having a complex structure and the ability to kind of slice and dice your information by custom fields. The last thing I wanted to show for document storage and access is that robust SharePoint search that I was talking about. So one of the important things to note, we'll talk about SharePoint security a little bit later, but everything in SharePoint is security trimmed. So even the search results will be security trimmed. So if I have access to only 10 documents out of SharePoint, no matter what I search, I'll only be able to search through those 10 documents. And if Whitney has access to everything in SharePoint, when she searches, it'll search through everything in SharePoint. So as I mentioned, the sorting and filtering we were doing was within a single document library in SharePoint. But now here on the site level, I can actually search across everything in SharePoint. So I'm going to search for a document called security. And you'll notice right away that not only does it give me documents that have security in the name, and of course the nice search preview that I had mentioned, but you'll see I also get documents that have security in the content. So it's actually indexing all of the information in the Word and PDF documents and not just the name of the file. Then we get the advantage as well of search refiners. So you can see I can refine by the result type here. So if I say, give me only PowerPoint presentations, now that refines these two PowerPoint presentations that I have that you can see have security in the document. And then of course you can refine by author as well, modified date. So if I was looking for something that's, you know, at least a year old, I can click and drag this slider and it will give me all these old documents. So the search is really powerful. The refinement types over here, you can also add your own refinement types. So just like we had client name and document type previously in our document library in our view, we can add those columns here so that we can search and refine by those as well.
David, before you move on, I noticed that we are getting a lot of questions right now in the comment box, so I just wanted to let everyone know that we will be answering them at the end of the presentation.
Thanks, Whitney. So I'm going to pop back into the SharePoint slide, go back over items 5 through 10 for using SharePoint as a document management system. We'll do another quick demo and then we'll get to your guys' questions. So the next item, and there are actually two different items, I categorize them together, sharing within your organization and sharing outside of your organization. So one of the primary driving factors for using SharePoint is, well, the first half of the word. It's SharePoint. So it's for sharing. So sharing within your organization is really easy. When you go to share with somebody, it already knows everybody that's at your company because they're all either in your Active Directory or your Office 365 users list. So when you'll see me do a share, I'll start to type Whitney and it'll automatically populate it in for me because it'll be pulling from Active Directory. Sharing outside of your organization is just almost as easy, but you just completely type in somebody's email address and it'll allow for you to share with them as well. Now I'm discussing sharing, but what am I really talking about? I'm sharing documents, I'm sharing entire folders of documents, I'm sharing libraries of documents, or I'm sharing an entire SharePoint site. So when I show you the share functionality, keep in mind that you can share at different scopes. So if I have an entire project site, let's say I'm collaborating with a client and we need to share our statement of work and our non-disclosure agreement back and forth so that the legal department can review it within my organization and within the client's organization. Well, all I have to do is click a share button and I can give them access to that file. They can make edits to it, save it, and then I can get a notification saying that my client has edited the document. So it's really as easy as clicking a share button in SharePoint and sending a link to the document. So you'll see my little slide comment down below. We're not even required to email documents anymore to be effective document sharers. We can just click a button in SharePoint and it will send a link, and it's not creating 2 copies of the document in exchange, doubling the information that we have to store from our IT department. It's really effective. One quick note on number 6 here, the sharing outside of your organization is available out of the box in SharePoint Online, Office 365. If you have SharePoint on-premise, you can still do it, but it just requires a small amount of configuration. Next 2 items for sharing and collaboration are document co-authoring and then, of course, the security model I mentioned before. So document co-authoring is something that's been kind of under development and being researched by Microsoft for a while now. It's actually a pretty big deal in Office 365. So with Office Web Apps, which you can also do on-prem, I can go into a document and Whitney can go into the same document, and we can both make changes to the document in different places simultaneously, and it will continue to save. So this is perfect for, let's say, we have a multi-tab Excel spreadsheet and we're working on numbers and we're working on different department numbers. We can work on that document at the same time without having to create 2 separate Excel spreadsheets and then smash them together later on. The full Office applications, so for 2013, are starting to support this as well, but there won't be full support for simultaneous editing of documents until Office 2016 comes out. But this is really powerful when you think about collaborating on things such as an RFP, where the RFP, for example, has to be worked on by the sales team on page 5 and the legal department on page 10. Well, it's as easy as opening up the Word doc in Word Web App, and I can edit one page and somebody else can edit a page later on, and I'll see their changes come immediately as they're typed in there. So I'll show the Office Web Apps used in the next little demo section. The robust security model, this is something that has been existent on file shares as well, but not nearly as easily managed. So the security model in SharePoint, and of course it's always important to have a governance plan in place so that we don't give too many people the ability to control security, because we do want to keep it locked down in certain areas. Like, for example, if you have an HR site with HR documents, you don't want everybody at the company accessing that. So SharePoint gives us an extremely flexible security model. There are different levels at which you can control the security. So you can control it at the site collection itself, which is very high level. You can control it at subsites below that. You can control it at the lists and libraries individually, folders below that, and you can even control security on individual documents. So if I wanted to share only one specific document out of a folder with a coworker, I could do that as well and make that security model work. Now again, you still want to keep some sort of governance plan in place, which is very important to do so you don't get people sharing documents right and left and end up having a too complex of a security structure. But SharePoint gives you the tools to put that governance policy in place. Governance policy. Anywhere, anytime access. So this is one of my favorite things about SharePoint. If you're using SharePoint Online, or if you install and configure your SharePoint on-prem correctly, you will not have to VPN in order to access your files, and you'll also be able to use any device to view or edit your documents. So no longer do you have to keep your work laptop, with the VPN software installed. If I were to be on family vacation and get an email from the CEO that said, hey, I need you to approve this document right away, I can click on his link, it'll pop open my SharePoint or my SharePoint Online instance. I can look at the document, click the approve button, no VPN required, and I can do it on my iPhone or my iPad or my Surface, whatever device I'm on. So this is a really awesome feature. SharePoint 2013 is the current version, and there's great mobile support, but the mobile support is supposed to be increased by like 200% with SharePoint 2016, which will be available next year. So it's a super easy upgrade process to move from the current version to the next version. And if you use SharePoint Online, that upgrade process is automatic. So not only do you get great external access and mobile features now, but we can expect even better external and mobile access features in the near future. Last item is syncing and offline access with OneDrive. So one of the items that people often get concerned about with SharePoint or with any cloud storage mechanism is that, hey, my documents are stored completely in the cloud. What if I need to be able to access them when I don't have internet access? What if I'm on an airplane that doesn't have Wi-Fi yet and I can't work on my documents? Well, OneDrive for Business is the solution for this. OneDrive for Business allows you to keep a synchronized local copy of all of your files that you have in SharePoint or in your OneDrive right on your computer. So you won't just have files in the cloud, you'll have the same exact copy of it on your local. And if you change one of the files on your local computer, and I'll show you guys this in a few minutes, if you change one of the files on your local computer while you're disconnected from the internet, as soon as you plug into the internet, it will update that file and upload up to date the latest version so that you can continue to collaborate with others. So the example I always give is, and it's maybe not so relevant anymore because now every time I fly there's Wi-Fi on the flight, but it worked perfectly when I would be heading on a business trip. I would be at the airport working on a presentation, disconnect so I could get on the plane. I could continue to work on my presentation on the plane, and as soon as I land and connect to the internet on my layover, it'll update my latest versions of the cloud, and everybody else will still have access to that. So it's a great feature regardless, just because you'll have local copies of all your documents. You won't have to download your docs that you're working on every time because you'll have a local copy as well. And with that, I'm going to jump into another small demo, and then we'll do some Q&A. So I'm going to pull up SharePoint again and go back to my intranet site. And head back over to the SharePoint team site. So let's say that I wanted to share this SharePoint site security guidance file with Whitney because she doesn't have access to the site. It's as easy as clicking this share button, typing Whitney in here, and you can see she comes up right away because she's part of the organization. And then I get to choose, do I want Whitney to edit or view the document? And I don't want her to edit my document, so I'm just going to click view. And then I have the ability to send an email, which it defaults. And I can always put in a message like, for example, this PowerPoint presentation that we were just looking at, I shared with Whitney earlier, and I said, Whitney, please take a look at this and let me know if you have any questions. Click share, and if we were on Whitney's computer right now, we'd see an email pop up. You can see there's a notice here for me. See an email pop up, and you'd see a link to the document. You'd just be able to click on the link to the document, and it would automatically send her directly to this document. So if you want to share with somebody outside of your organization, you just need to make sure that the sharing is enabled because for security governance purposes, IT has the ability to turn that sharing off. So for example, if I had an intranet site where we have our HR documents and our policies and procedures, I don't want somebody sharing that with all of our clients, so I would turn the ability to share off on that intranet. Then we'd have an extranet for communicating with our clients, and I'd turn sharing, the ability to share on there. So it's an important thing to note is that it's completely configurable. So if I wanted to share with somebody that wasn't in the organization, I could just start to type in their email address, you know, joesmith@whatever.com, and if I click share, it'll go ahead and send a link to the document to him and allow him to log in and collaborate on the document as well. Now we talked a little bit about co-authoring in Office Web Apps. So when I edited this document previously, I clicked on the menu and I selected that I wanted to edit it in Word, but if I just click on the document, it will actually take me to Word Web App. So you can see that I'm in Word Online and I'm not in the actual full version of Word. So if we were on an iPad or an iPhone and we didn't have, you know, Microsoft's version of Office installed, we wouldn't be able to make any edits. But let's say we're out you know, on a sales trip on our iPad and I want to log in, open up an Excel spreadsheet and modify the number of items that somebody is purchasing. It'd be really quick and easy to open that up and just say edit document, edit in Word Online, and now I can make changes here in Word Online. Sorry, it's asked me to check out the document because I have forced checkout turned on. But it's a quick and easy way to edit these documents just right in the browser without even having to have the Office application installed. And then, of course, if two people were to log in and we had forced checkout turned off, we would also be able to type in here simultaneously. So the last item I wanted to show is the OneDrive sync. So if I pop over to my OneDrive, which is available in SharePoint Online or on-premise, you can see I have branding examples, clients, and these are all my documents that are for my personal use. So SharePoint libraries, like I showed you, client documents, are really for collaborating amongst the team, whereas OneDrive is more so for just my use. Sometimes I might share a document or two. You can see that I've shared this project of the quarter nomination form with somebody, but most of the time it's only me that can view these documents. If I look on my hard drive, you'll see that I have a matching folder structure here. So these files are all actually stored on my hard drive on my computer, but they're also stored up in the cloud. So I actually had an example of this happen to me just a few weeks ago where my and I won't say what company my laptop is, but my hard drive died on my laptop, and it was horrible because I had a lot of stuff to do that day. But the IT team simply just gave me a new laptop, and I connected, clicked sync, and I had all of my documents downloaded directly to my new OneDrive folder because everything was up in the cloud. So, you know, not only is that offline access and that OneDrive sync important, but having that data in the cloud, you know, keeps you safe from worrying about when your computer might explode. So you'll see if I go and I'm going to drag this document template onto my computer folder. Sorry, so I'm going to drive OneDrive document template into OneDrive on my computer. And if I give it a second, you'll see there's a little blue icon here that tells me it's syncing, and now it's green. And if I go refresh my OneDrive for Business, that document template is now up in the cloud as well. So as soon as I open and edit that on my computer, it'll sync the changes up to the cloud, and I will always have these two pieces of information in sync. And I think with that, we can move on to a Q&A session with you guys. I hope that was informative, and I hope you guys like SharePoint as much as I do.
All right, let's go to Q&A. So question number 1, does SharePoint search and other features apply equally to all SharePoint versions? We are still on 2010.
So with SharePoint 2010, you'll get a similar search experience to the one that I showed. However, you most likely won't have a document preview unless you have Office Web Apps and what's called Fast Search installed. So out of the box, 2013 comes with that awesome search. Your search will be a little bit less awesome, but still pretty good.
So the second question is kind of in relation to that. So is Office 2013 required to take advantage of all of this functionality, or will something like this work with 2010 Pro?
So 2010, you'll still be able to open and edit documents and change properties, but the integration is just a little bit less tight. So for example, if I open a Word document in Word 2013, and then Whitney is editing it in the Office Web App version, I'll see a little icon pop up that says, hey, you can't edit this area because somebody's editing this area in Office Web App. Whereas with 2010, I won't see that kind of information, but so if we were using 2010 across the organization, I probably would recommend using forced checkout so that the document had to be checked out before you made edits to it.
Perfect. Are you still able to browse to the documents via UNC/share paths in File Explorer?
So it's not exactly a UNC path, but yes, you can open and use File Explorer. So let me just show that really quick in case you're still on. If I go to one of my sites, and I go to my SharePoint team site and my client documents, I can actually pop open Library here and say Open with Explorer, and this will give me an Explorer view of the same document library that I have, so we can drag and drop documents. There are certain reasons that you would and wouldn't want to use this. For example, if somebody mapped the drive, which you can still map this drive to as a network drive. So if I wanted an N drive, I could map it to SharePoint. But you just have to be careful because some users aren't really, don't really understand that they're working with SharePoint and might delete a lot of documents or something like that. So it's something that you want to be careful in building a governance plan around.
Cool. Next question. Can these filtered views be rolled up under the client? When you go to the Clients tab and view the client, can associated documents show up there to prevent having to go back to client documents?
Yes. Yes. So that's a great question. So you can create filtered views, and then what you would do is you'd have another metadata column on the client's page, and it would be a link to that view. So yes, and we've definitely done that before because it's kind of quicker and easier. You see client, maybe some contact information, and then you can just click view and see all the documents associated with it. So between every different entity, like the lists and libraries in SharePoint, you can connect them back and forth. That's that relational database style thing I was talking about.
Perfect. What happens if while you are working on your presentation, someone else is as well? How did the versions get integrated?
So you have to be careful when you select whether or not you want to use co-authoring. So on the presentation example there, we would probably have that in a library that would force checkout. So what would happen is I have to check the document out in order to edit it, and then Whitney wouldn't be able to go make any edits to it until I check it back in. There'd be very specific cases that we'd want to use the co-authoring where we could both edit it at the same time, and it's usually much larger collaborative documents. So it completely depends on the case, and we can set it up differently in different areas in SharePoint.
Okay. This next one's a little bit of a long one. If someone changes the document while I have the document offline and making my own changes, what happens when I sync and I'm no longer working from the current version? Will I get a warning, or will the other user get a warning that the document is offline by another user?
So that again will completely depend on if forced checkout is enabled or not. So I could show a couple different cases, but I think that'd probably be something you want to connect with us offline, and I can give you a hand with. Can
a SharePoint site be mapped as a network drive?
Yes.
Perfect. Can digital signatures be used through SharePoint to approve documents?
Yes, and we partner with a company called DocuSign, which we recommend, and you can have, as part of a SharePoint approval workflow, let's say, I needed to make sure, I was giving the example of statements of work before, so we could make an approval workflow where if I send it over to my client, they have to use DocuSign to sign it, which is all integrated, and then it comes back to me and I can click approve. That will add my signature, and then it's a fully executed statement of work. It's not out of the box. It's a third-party add-on, but yes, it's absolutely available.
Perfect. What is the difference between a public site and a team site?
So a public site, when somebody says a public site, typically they're talking about an internet site. So it would be a site that has anonymous access. So that means you would have information on the site, announcements or documents or whatever it may be, and it's accessible to anybody without even logging in or without clicking share. A team site is something that you would keep accessible to only people within your organization, or maybe your organization and another client, like if you were collaborating on a project, and that you would have to log in order to access the files. With that public site, it's like, google.com, anybody can go there, anybody can see the info.
And I guess in relation to that, if you share a document with someone outside the organization, you mentioned they log in. Do they need a user ID and password?
Yeah, there's two different ways to share documents, and I forgot to mention this before. There's two different ways to share documents in that manner. You can require that they need a username and password, which would mean they'd either use their Office 365 username and password or a simple Windows Live ID, which many people have, or you can sign up for really easily for free. So you can force that they log in, or you can send a link to them that has a special token in it that gives them 72 hours to go connect and log in and view the document without having to log in. And that's up to the IT department if they want to allow that type of sharing or not. Typically, it's kept to requiring a login for auditing purpose.
Nice, thanks, David. So that was the last question for now. We'll give you guys a few more minutes to add any last-minute questions if you had any. While we wait, David, did you want to go over the promotion?
Yeah, so we decided to do a special promotion for attendees of our webinar today and offer some free consulting services. So as a special thank you for attending, we're offering a free SharePoint assessment for the first 3 clients or prospects on the webinar that reach out to us. It's a 2-hour SharePoint assessment with a SharePoint architect. We will either assess an existing SharePoint environment that you have and provide recommendations for how best practices aren't being used, how they could be used, and help plan a roadmap for improving on those things. Or if you don't already have SharePoint, we can talk to your IT department or your internal department stakeholders, determine what their needs are, and explain how we can create those things in SharePoint for you. So this is typically, about a $500 value. And if you give a call to the phone number on the screen or shoot an email out, we'll get you guys set up in order of whoever reaches out for the free assessment.
Awesome. So let's see, it looks like we have no more questions. Thank you, David, and thank you everyone for attending our SharePoint webinar today. I hope you all have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you at future webinars.
Yep, thank you very much.